Down on the land today with the Walmart Ozark Trail orange crossbar folder with D2 steel and FRN handles. This is the Generation 2, and Ozark Trail has been quietly making a couple of changes to this knife behind the scenes, and they've relaunched it after they've been out of stock for a while on Walmart. Now, it was hard for me to find this one in store. In fact, it was impossible for me to find this knife in store in over 3 months, but I saw it online, and now they actually have 3 different color options available: orange, black, and green. But at the time of filming, orange was the only one in stock. Now, there was black in stock, and I was going to order it, but as I was placing the order, the black went out of stock. We're going to be down on the land today doing some testing, and then we're going to be going back to the tabletop to compare it to Gen 1, but we're going to start off with a sharpness test of seeing if it can cut through this seat belt, and then we will continue to beat it up down here. And right off the bat, this is not as sharp as the Gen 1, so this might actually change the course of this video. So we got it to cut through there. Let's see if we can get it to cut through again. Okay, we got it to cut through a little bit more, but I remember the Generation 1 right out of the box sliced right through. Now, for me, that's not a big deal. We can put an edge on this, and if you're unfamiliar, this one is a Crossbar D2 with coated steel and that FRN handle. Now, the Generation 2 has some new features, which we'll talk about in the table, but before we do, let's beat it up a little bit and see if it still holds the edge and can cut through the seatbelt at the end of this testing. First up, we are simply going to whittle a piece of wood and see if it can hold its edge during that process. I'm going to speed it up for you guys. The next test we're going to do is kind of an edge test. We're going to pop that into the wood a few times. Let's see after that if we can cut through the seatbelt, and then we will do the tire test. Here we go. Yep, still cuts through, and actually that was fairly easy. Maybe those first few was just kind of me figuring out that cut and that pull, but still I just seem to remember that Generation 1 being a touch easier. But again, QC on a $10 Walmart knife, every one is going to be a little bit different. But the good thing though is it's actually holding up with that kind of standard test. Now for the tire test. Plunges right in. Oh, cuts through, no problem. The one complaint I had about the Gen 1 is that it's still present with the Gen 2 is this knife has a substantial amount of flex in the blade. A lot of guys were saying, oh, this is like the $10 D2 knife killer that kills every other budget knife on the market. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the action on this thing. I love the knife, but there is definitely some cons to a $10 folder. I'm not trying to knock it by any means, but I'm also not trying to give it any undue praise. We do have a lot of play and wiggle in this knife, but it sliced through that tire no problem, and it held up pretty well. Let's do the final seatbelt test and see if we can still cut through. Tires are pretty tricky because they actually have metal reinforcements going through them, and yep, it still cuts through, so the edge actually held up pretty well. Now let's head back to the table. All right, so we are back at the tabletop, and I want to talk about the differences. We're going to do some sharpness testing up here and really talk about the knife in general. The first thing that I want to discuss is the differences between the two knives, and right off the bat, you can already see two obvious differences. One is the color orange is much more vibrant and much more consistent across models. I actually purchased 3 of these for a cross section. I knew I was going to be doing some destructive testing, and the orange is consistent across the models, whereas before the orange was very inconsistent depending on which one you grab. So you could see there's almost 3 different variations of orange and even 2 different variations of orange on one knife itself, which was a little bit disappointing if you wanted, you know, your colors to match from one side to the next. The handle texture is actually very smooth on Gen 1, and it's got a more abrasive finish on the Gen 2. The other difference is the fact that the Gen 2 has a completely reversible pocket clip, which I absolutely love for left and right-handed carry. So off the bat, the new Generation 2 gives you a really nice advantage when it comes to color, feel, and the fact that you have that reversible pocket clip. And with the Crossbar, it is now completely ambidextrous for left and right-handed carry, and you still get the same smooth and reliable action that you do with the Gen 1. Now, Let's talk about the elephant in the room, me trying to cut that seatbelt right out of the gate. Now, this is a Generation 1 that I did a torture test on, and it held up pretty good. I did put a new edge on it, and I also tightened up that T8 Torx bit, which is the crossbar. Let's grab the torture test knife right here. Yep, this guy right here. The blade held up pretty good. There was a little wobble. We tightened up that T8 bit, and a lot of it went away, but it is still present. You can see there's still a lot of flex in this knife, and that's just the nature of the beast for the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, but still very smooth and reliable action on this knife. So let's put the torture test models aside and go with the right out of the box models and do a sharpness test on paper and cardstock. Gen 1, fresh out of the box, standard factory edge. Yes, that's how sharp I remember it being. Slicing right through, cardstock. Yeah, cuts through it, no problem. That is the standard off-the-shelf Gen 1. All right, off-the-shelf Gen 2. Let's see how that cuts. Oh yeah, slices right through. Really nice. Let's try cardstock. So that worked out really well. I also brought a seatbelt section up here, Generation 1. Now we can actually compare apples to apples side by side. Slices, that sliced right through. This is not the one we had on the land. This is a the second one that I purchased. Let's try to slice through the seatbelt. Okay. Little bit more difficult, but that is about the only difference, and that seems to be across the board. Not really that big of a deal, just something to consider to put it into perspective between Gen 1 and Gen 2. Now, for this knife, for the $10 price point, it is going to be insanely hard to beat, but is the Ozark Trail Orange Folder Gen 2 the end-all be-all with the updates when it comes to folding pocket knives with D2 steel? And I would say the answer is no. There's a lot of knives on the market that have a much solid feel to them. You don't have all this play and wobble in them. There's also knives on the market that have a much thicker blade itself, blade stock. And there's much better knives when it comes to like ergonomics and feel. But there's nothing on the market that even comes close to competing with this for $10 now with the reversible pocket clips. For me, this was a no carry simply because I carry my knives in my left-hand pocket and I didn't want it accidentally opening it up in my pocket with the blade open to the pocket when I stuck my hand in. Now I can carry it with the blade opening to the back of the pocket and flip that. So now it becomes a carryable model. If you're traveling and you arrive at a location and you couldn't take your pocket knife because you were flying or riding on a train or something like that, now you can show up to Walmart and grab a budget beater that's absolutely awesome and that can handle any task you really throw at it. Now, I know we didn't do like a super insane torture test with it down at the lands, but we have been beating up the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, and they've been holding up great over time. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you think about the Ozark Trail Walmart folders, and have you got a chance to try out the Gen 2? Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can always hear my fair and honest evaluation of knives, gear, gadgets, and doing survival challenges. I'd love to have you on board. And we do an Amazon deal alert video every single week with the best deals I find on Amazon. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.